The park was full of quiet movement that afternoon. Families walked slowly along the paths and children played near the swings while birds rested in the trees above. The air felt calm and ordinary like any other day in the city park. Near an old wooden bench close to the walking path, an elderly man stood alone. His name was Walter, and he looked tired from many years of carrying memories that no one else could see. Walter wore a faded brown coat that looked carefully cleaned, but very old. His shoes were worn at the edges, and his hands shook slightly as he held a wooden cane. His hair was thin and white, and his face showed deep lines shaped by time and loss. He did not look dangerous or angry. He looked like someone waiting for something he was not sure would ever return. Walter came to the park every afternoon at the same time. He always stood near the same bench before slowly sitting down. He liked this place because it was quiet enough to think and busy enough to feel less alone. Watching people pass by helped him remember that life was still moving even if his own days felt slow and heavy. That afternoon someone in the park noticed Walter standing for a long time and making small movements with his hands. The person felt uneasy and decided to call the authorities. The call described an elderly man acting strangely and possibly confused. Within minutes, a police vehicle arrived near the park entrance. Officer Mark stepped out of the vehicle with calm confidence. He had worked many years in law enforcement and was known for staying level-headed in public situations. Beside him walked his K9 partner, Rex, a strong German shepherd with sharp eyes and focused posture. Rex was highly trained and known for his obedience and discipline. People in the park noticed the officer and the dog and began to move away slightly. Parents called their children closer and conversations grew quiet. Walter looked up when he heard the sound of boots on the path. His eyes widened as he saw the officer and the dog walking toward him. Walter felt a sudden fear rise in his chest. He had not done anything wrong, but years of loneliness had made him sensitive to attention. His grip tightened on the cane and his breathing became uneven. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Officer Mark stopped a few feet away and assessed the situation. Walter did not look threatening, but protocol required caution. Mark gave a clear command to Rex to move forward and prepare to restrain if needed. His voice was firm but controlled. Rex took one step forward and then stopped. The officer frowned slightly and repeated the command. Rex shifted his weight but did not advance. His ears lowered and his tail dropped gently. The dog made a soft sound that was not aggressive but uncertain. The park grew quiet as people noticed something unusual was happening. Rex had never ignored a command before. Officer Mark felt confusion and concern at the same time. He tightened the leash and gave the order again. Rex sat down. Walter looked at the dog with shaking eyes. Something about Rex felt familiar to him, though he could not explain why. He slowly lowered himself onto the bench, as if his strength had suddenly left him. His hands rested on his knees and his head bowed slightly. Rex moved closer without being told. He walked slowly until he was right in front of Walter. Instead of showing force, he lowered his head and stayed still. The leash remained loose in Officer Mark's hand. Walter felt tears fill his eyes. He raised one hand slowly toward the dog, but stopped halfway, unsure if he was allowed to touch him. Rex stayed calm and did not pull away. Officer Mark noticed the change in Rex's behavior and felt something was not right. This was not a situation he had trained for. He watched closely as Rex gently leaned forward and rested his head near Walter's knee. Walter let out a quiet breath he had been holding inside for years. His shoulders shook slightly as tears rolled down his face. The park felt frozen in time as everyone watched in silence. Officer Mark lowered his voice and asked Walter if he was feeling unwell. Walter nodded slowly and said he was just tired. He said he had not meant to scare anyone. His voice was weak but honest. Rex stayed close as if guarding Walter rather than restraining him. The dog's eyes remained soft and focused only on the old man. Walter reached into the inner pocket of his coat very slowly. A few people nearby gasped, thinking he might be pulling something dangerous. Officer Mark raised his hand, gently signaling calm, and did not rush forward. Walter pulled out a small folded photograph. His hands trembled as he opened it carefully. The picture showed a younger man in a police uniform standing beside a German shepherd. Both looked proud and strong. Walter looked at the photo and then at Rex. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something important. Tears continued to fall as memories returned all at once. He said the dog in the photo was named Buddy. Buddy had been his partner when he served as a police officer many years ago. They worked together day and night through hard times and dangerous moments. Buddy had been more than a working dog. He had been family. After Buddy grew old and passed away, Walter said his life changed. His home felt empty and the days felt long. Coming to the park was the only thing that brought him peace. He came hoping to feel close to the past that once gave his life meaning. Rex listened quietly, as if he understood every word. He stayed close and did not move away, even when Officer Mark stepped closer to see the photo. The resemblance between Rex and Buddy was striking. Officer Mark felt a strange heaviness in his chest as he realized why Rex had refused the command. The park was no longer a place of suspicion. It had become a place where something deeper was unfolding. And this was only the beginning. The air in the park felt heavier after Walter showed the photograph. People who had been standing far away slowly moved closer, not out of curiosity, but out of quiet respect. No one spoke loudly. Even the children seemed to sense that something serious and gentle was happening in front of them. Officer Mark crouched slightly so he could see the photograph clearly. The younger man in the picture stood tall in his uniform with a proud but calm smile. Beside him the dog sat straight and alert with eyes full of trust. It was clear that the bond between them had been strong and real. Walter held the photograph close to his chest, as if afraid it might disappear. His breathing was slow and uneven. He explained that Buddy had saved his life more than once during his years of service. They trusted each other without question and understood each other without words. Rex remained still the entire time. His body language showed no tension or fear. His focus stayed locked on Walter as if the rest of the park no longer existed. The leash hung loose from Officer Mark's hand, and for the first time he did not feel the need to control it. Officer Mark asked Walter if he lived nearby. Walter nodded and said his small apartment was only a few blocks away. He said he no longer had a car and walking to the park was the longest journey he made each day. It gave his days a reason to begin and end. Walter said he always sat on this same bench because Buddy used to sit beside him on a bench just like it during their breaks many years ago. Sitting there helped him feel close to the memories that still mattered most to him. Rex slowly lowered himself into a lying position at Walter's feet. He rested his chin on his paws and sighed softly. It was a sound of comfort, not stress. Several people nearby wiped tears from their faces. Officer Mark felt something shift inside him. He had followed rules and procedures his entire career, but this moment did not feel like one that belonged in a manual. It felt human and deeply personal. The officer spoke into his radio and calmly reported that there was no threat and no action required. He explained that the situation was resolved and peaceful. The response came back, quickly approving the decision. Walter closed his eyes when he heard this. His shoulders relaxed, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from him. He whispered a quiet thank you, though he was not sure who it was meant for. Rex lifted his head slightly when Walter spoke and gently nudged his knee with his nose. Walter placed his hand on Rex's head and for the first time allowed himself to touch him. His fingers moved slowly through the thick fur. The feeling brought back memories Walter thought he had buried. Long nights on patrol. Quiet moments after difficult days. a loyal presence that never judged or left his side. His tears returned, but this time they were mixed with relief. Officer Mark stood back and allowed the moment to continue. He noticed how Rex leaned into the touch with full trust. This was not training behavior. This was connection. A woman from the crowd stepped forward and offered Walter a bottle of water. He accepted it with a small nod and drank carefully. His hands still shook, but his eyes looked clearer now. Walter shared more of his story. He spoke about how after retiring his life grew smaller. Friends moved away. His wife passed after a long illness. Silence filled his home and time felt endless. Coming to the park became his routine. Watching people live their lives helped him feel less invisible. He never intended to worry anyone. He only wanted to sit and remember. Rex listened as if every word mattered. His ears moved slightly with the sound of Walter's voice. He did not look away even once. Officer Mark asked Walter if he had family he could call. Walter said his daughter lived far away and visited when she could. He did not want to trouble her with small things. The officer nodded with understanding. He had seen loneliness many times in different forms. This one felt especially heavy. The crowd slowly began to disperse, but many people stayed nearby watching quietly. The park returned to motion, but the mood had changed. Strangers now shared a silent understanding. After some time, Officer Mark gently told Walter that he and Rex would need to continue their patrol. Walter nodded, but his face showed a flash of sadness. Rex sensed it immediately and shifted closer. When Officer Mark gave the signal to stand, Rex hesitated. He looked at Walter and then back at the officer. His body remained still. Officer Mark paused and then allowed Rex a few more moments. He understood that forcing the dog now would feel wrong. Walter smiled weakly and told Rex he was a good boy. He said it softly, the same way he used to speak to Buddy. Rex responded by lifting his head and holding Walter's gaze. Officer Mark finally guided Rex to stand. Rex obeyed slowly but kept looking back as they took a few steps away. Walter watched them with wet eyes and a hand still raised. As they reached the edge of the path, Rex stopped and turned his head again. His body tensed slightly as if he wanted to return. Officer Mark felt the weight of that look. Something inside him knew this was not meant to be a one-time meeting. And as they walked away, the park held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The next afternoon the park looked the same but felt different to Walter. He arrived early and sat on the same bench holding his cane with both hands. His eyes kept moving toward the path where the police unit had walked away the day before. Part of him believed what happened was only a dream created by loneliness. Walter told himself not to expect anything. He had learned long ago that hope could be painful. Still, his heart felt restless and his hands trembled more than usual as time passed. Across the park, Officer Mark slowed his patrol vehicle. He had not planned to return so soon, but his thoughts kept returning to the old man and the way Rex had reacted. Mark had barely slept the night before. He kept replaying the moment Rex refused the command and the look in Walter's eyes. Rex sat upright in the back seat, alert and focused. The moment the vehicle stopped, Rex lifted his head and pulled slightly toward the park path. His body showed clear recognition. Officer Mark sighed softly and opened the door. Rex stepped out and moved forward with purpose. Mark followed without resistance. Walter looked up when he heard familiar footsteps. His breath caught when he saw Rex walking toward him again. His eyes widened and his lips parted in disbelief. Rex reached Walter before any command was given. He lowered himself beside the bench and rested close to Walter's leg. Walter let out a quiet sound between a laugh and a sob. Officer Mark approached and greeted Walter warmly. He said he wanted to check in and make sure Walter was doing well. Walter nodded and said he had been thinking about Rex all night. The two sat together on the bench. Rex positioned himself between them, calm and steady. His presence felt grounding, like an anchor holding something fragile in place. Walter shared more stories from his past. He spoke about early mornings on duty and long nights when only Buddy kept him company. He spoke about how Buddy knew when he was tired and would press close without being asked. As Walter spoke, Rex reacted to certain words by lifting his ears or shifting closer. Officer Mark watched carefully. He had never seen such clear emotional response from a trained dog outside controlled situations. Walter explained that Buddy used to sit on his left side, exactly where Rex now rested. The memory made his voice shake. Rex responded by adjusting his position slightly until he matched the spot perfectly. Tears filled Walter's eyes again. He placed his hand gently on Rex's back and felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing. For the first time in years, Walter felt safe. Officer Mark asked Walter if he would like to take a short walk. Walter hesitated, then nodded. He stood slowly, using his cane. Rex stood at the same pace, matching each step. They walked along the path slowly. People passed by and smiled softly. Some recognized them from the day before. The atmosphere felt gentle and respectful. Walter moved with more confidence than before. Rex stayed close without pulling or leading. It felt natural, like two old partners finding rhythm again. Walter said something quietly that caught Officer Mark's attention. He said Buddy used to walk exactly like this. Same pace. Same patience. Officer Mark felt a deep sense of awe. He had trained Rex from a young age and knew his habits well. This behavior was not something he had taught. They returned to the bench and Walter sat down again. Rex lay beside him and rested his head near Walter's knee. Officer Mark made a decision that surprised even himself. He asked Walter if he would like Rex to visit the park regularly during patrol hours. He said it would not break any rules. Walter looked at him in shock. His eyes filled with tears, but this time he smiled fully. He nodded and thanked the officer again and again. From that day forward, Rex came to the park every afternoon. The visits became part of the patrol routine. Everyone in the area grew used to the sight of the old man and the loyal dog. Walter's posture changed over time. He sat straighter. His eyes held more light. He began speaking more freely to people who passed by. Rex remained deeply connected. If Walter coughed, Rex lifted his head. If Walter paused, Rex waited. Their bond grew stronger with each visit. One afternoon, Walter brought a small cloth bag with him. Inside were old items from his service days. He showed Officer Mark a worn badge and a folded letter. The letter was something Walter had written years ago to Buddy after his passing. He never had the heart to throw it away. He read parts of it quietly as Rex listened. Rex rested his head fully on Walter's lap during the reading. His eyes closed, but his body stayed alert. Officer Mark felt tears form despite his efforts to stay composed. He realized this connection was healing both of them in different ways. Walter said he no longer felt invisible. He said the park felt alive again. He said Rex had given him something he thought was gone forever. As the sun lowered that afternoon, the park glowed with warm light. Walter and Rex stayed together until it was time for patrol to continue. When Officer Mark finally stood to leave, Rex hesitated again, but this time Walter smiled and told him it was okay. Rex looked back once, then followed. Walter watched them go with a calm heart. He knew they would return. The bond was no longer a moment. It had become a promise. The weeks passed, and the park slowly became a place of quiet change for Walter. Each afternoon he arrived a little earlier and sat on the same bench with his cane resting beside him. His face no longer looked as heavy as before, and his eyes carried a calm expectation. Rex and Officer Mark continued their visits without fail. The sound of the patrol vehicle stopping near the path became familiar to Walter. Each time Rex stepped out, his tail moved gently and his focus locked onto the bench. Walter always greeted Rex with a soft smile and calm voice. Rex responded by sitting close and staying alert but relaxed. The park visitors noticed how peaceful the scene felt, and many paused just to watch. Officer Mark saw the difference clearly. Walter spoke more and laughed sometimes. His hands shook less and his posture grew stronger. The quiet bond between the old man and the dog was changing him in ways medicine never could. One afternoon Walter did not arrive on time. Rex stopped near the bench and waited. He looked around with concern and refused to move forward. Officer Mark felt uneasy and decided to wait. Minutes passed and then Walter appeared, walking slower than usual. His steps were careful and his breathing looked strained. Rex moved toward him immediately and stayed close until Walter reached the bench. Walter admitted he had been feeling weak that morning. He said age was finally catching up to him. Officer Mark listened carefully and suggested a checkup. Walter nodded, knowing it was time to accept help. From that day, Officer Mark made sure someone checked on Walter regularly. A local community group also began to visit after hearing about the bond in the park. Walter was no longer alone. Rex remained a steady presence. When Walter rested, Rex stayed still. When Walter spoke, Rex listened. The park became a place of comfort, not just for them but for everyone who witnessed it. One morning Walter arrived holding a small envelope. He handed it to Officer Mark with a quiet request. He asked him to read it only when the time felt right. Officer Mark accepted it with respect and promised to honor Walter's wish. Rex watched closely as if he understood the importance of the moment. That afternoon Walter spent more time talking to Rex than usual. He shared stories from his youth and moments from his service. His voice was steady and peaceful. As the sun lowered, Walter placed his hand on Rex's head and thanked him for finding him. He said Buddy would be proud. Rex rested his head against Walter's leg and stayed there. Days later Walter did not come to the park. Rex waited again, but this time the bench stayed empty. Officer Mark felt the weight in his chest grow heavy. Later that evening he received the news. Walter had passed quietly in his sleep. The next day, Officer Mark opened the envelope. Inside was a short letter written in careful handwriting. Walter thanked him for trusting Rex and for giving him peace in his final days. He wrote that Rex had returned something precious to him. Officer Mark brought Rex to the park one last time. They sat near the bench in silence. Rex stayed still and alert, looking toward the path, as if waiting. Officer Mark placed a small plaque on the bench in Walter's memory. It spoke of loyalty, friendship, and second chances. People stopped to read it, and many felt tears form. Rex sat beside the bench for a long time. He did not move or make a sound. When it was time to leave, he stood slowly and looked back once. The park never forgot the story. People still speak of the dog who refused to command and the old man who found peace. Children ask their parents why the bench matters. The answer is always the same. Because loyalty remembers. And sometimes love returns when it is needed most.